Welcome to Born to be Barefoot. I'm your host, Stuart Gordon, with my co-host, Katie Suyuki. Well, welcome to Barefoot Science's sponsored Born to be Barefoot podcast with our wonderful guest that we have on, a lady called Mirna Valerio, who is joining us from, whereabouts, Mirna, are you now?
I have to look around and see where I am. I'm in Vermont, where I live. I'm normally in other places around the world or in the US, but I actually happen to be home. So I am in Montpelier, Vermont.
Oh, beautiful.
Fantastic. So Mirna, you've been invited on as a guest for this podcast because, quite honestly, you do some amazing things. So the podcast is called Born to be Barefoot. It's about people who have great stories, who do some really interesting things. And predominantly what we're looking at is people who do stuff that has longevity to it. You know, that is something that they want to keep doing and that they can encourage other people to keep doing, like me, into my dotage. So you run. Basically, you run.
Do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us how, why, when did it all start for you?
Sure. Let's see. I am 46 right now. I'll be 47 pretty soon. And I have been running since 1989. So since I was 13, about to become 14 in high school. And I started running because I wanted to get better at field hockey and lacrosse. And those are the two sports that I played in high school. And I had no experience playing team sports or playing a sport on a field where you had to run a lot and chase a ball. And I somehow got on the field hockey team, like at the beginning of school. It was the first day that I got there. It was a boarding school, about 50 minutes outside of New York City, and where I'm from. And, it's a hot day. I'm not wearing the right clothes. I'm probably kids with no tread on them at all. Remember those shoes? And long cotton tights and a long shirt. And it's like 90 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius. And with 40, maybe, I don't know, 30 something, 30. And, and so I'm trying out and I'm doing really poorly. But I somehow got on the team. The coach was amazing to me and I wanted to really, really contribute to that team. So I started to learn how to run. That when I found out that I was accepted, I went down to the field hockey field the day after our first tryout and practice. And I started running around the field just to repeat the same types of things that we had to do during practice the day before. And my body was very sore and in a lot of pain, of course, because I had never done that much movement on purpose. But that's it. Eventually, a couple of weeks later, I would get up in the morning. Again, it's a boarding school. So I roll out of my bed, roll down the hill to the field hockey field, do the 5 or 6 loops of the field and, do some stretching and trying to remember what we had done in practice. So just so I could practice and get better. And eventually I started to really appreciate just the running itself because it made me feel good. Not only did it make me a better athlete and I was faster and I was able to sustain myself during 2.5, 3 hour practices, but I just felt better and I had more energy. And I just loved getting up in the morning. I've always been a super early morning person, to the chagrin of my parents. Probably. And and that's how that started. It was 1989. So, a lot of people think that I started running as an adult or that I discovered as an adult. I started in high school, 1989. And with the exception of a 3.5, 4 year pause, well, that's what I'll call it. That's how long I've been running.
Interesting, Isn't it? So, Katie, your high school system, did you play these lacrosse in high school? Was that something that you had to do?
Well, I too went to boarding school from
Yeah.
yeah, from 14 to about 19 or whatever. So yeah, really long time being away and being in, and they like at my boarding school they made you do sports pretty much. Like you can be on a varsity team or you can be on like the house league team, but you had to do like a sport. You couldn't just and like sports were like real. It wasn't just like, oh, for sports time, like we'll go do computers or something. It was like, no, you had to play like broom ball or field hockey. I also played field hockey. So yeah.
Best game.
Yeah. It's like, it's a pretty adamant sport because I'm just like, how did, with all of these times and everything, how did the men get to wear shorts and the women wear skirts?
Yeah.
running around the field.
And they're still wearing skirts. I see them. Yeah,
I know. But like, I actually quite enjoyed wearing the skirt because it was like some mixture of this like almost primal feeling of running around with a stick, hitting a ball, and then shouldering some girls every once in a while. That happened.
It's a pretty vicious game,
like wearing these little skirts.
They were cute. They were cute outfits.
But what about like because you crossed over from lacrosse and field hockey, right? So like kind of similar concept, right? Of the way how you run around the field, but different handling of the ball.
Right. And and obviously there are lots of benefits to just running for running's sake, but I didn't know that yet, right? I didn't have the language for that yet, but I was like, oh, I like this, and I also really wanted to emulate my coach, who I adored, and I really wanted to make her happy. And in that process, I was becoming a better athlete because she was such an awesome person and accepted me onto the team. And as a person from the city that had never done a sport like that, as a person who was, I was plus size as a ninth grader, in high school. And I did not know what I was doing, but she trusted that I would learn, and that was really cool. And that really drew her to me. And so I was like, I just want to get better, and I want to run like Coach Harrop, and because she'd be like bopping around campus and and running up hills and talking to somebody else that was running with her at the same time, which I thought was amazing because I can't do that still. But yeah, and it's, running for me is a very joyous activity, even though it's not always joyous in the moment. Yeah. And that's whenever I run, that's what I think about. I think about those initial days of field hockey where it was so hard, but I did it anyway.
I was checking out your Instagram. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was checking out your Instagram, and you're just talking about like running and the piece, and like being in Vermont, you have access to amazing terrain.
Oh yeah.
And I would imagine, is it right out your back door there?
Well, now I live smack in the middle of Montpelier, which is the capital city. I'll put city in quotes.
Okay.
And I think the entirety of Montpelier is about maybe one New York City building. And so, but, I'm 5 minutes away, a 5-minute drive, a 10-minute walk. I've got trails right here, and it's really kind of a perfect place to live for a runner, anybody who's any sort of athlete.
Yeah, it is. But like out of all of the places, home is always nice to be because it's a comfort. But when you're out there in the world, where is your like kind of your top places that you've been able to, stretch your feet into?
I really love, in the States, I really love Colorado.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just spectacular. There are different kinds of trails. You're in the Rockies. Well, if you are in the Colorado Rockies, right? You're in the Rockies. You've got switchbacks, which are really nice. Out east here, we don't do switchbacks. We just go straight up the mountain. And it's very, very technical running and hiking here. Whereas in Colorado, I mean, you could get the technical stuff the higher you go, but it's more groomed. It's more flowy, more views, that sort of thing. And so I love that aspect of being out west. And then, but in, outside of the United States, I really, really, really love the Azores. little islands, archipelago in the Atlantic between the US and Europe, and they are part of Portugal. And, I've been there a couple of times to run in the Azores Trail Run. And it's just spectacular. It is absolutely spectacular. It's kind of like Hawaii in the Atlantic, but cheaper.
Yeah.
And with fewer people that speak English. And it is, you're running, it's technical running. There's a lot of vertical gain, a lot of climbing. But you're on islands and there's water everywhere and there's volcanic mountains everywhere. And I don't know if it's technical. It's not subtropical, but it's moist. It's amazing. It's beautiful. The people are wonderful. And I've only ever had really good experiences there. So like, that's I would say right now, my favorite place to run outside of the United States.
Katie, just quickly, when we had Jeff Stapleton on, was he talking when he had his volcano incident? Was that the Azores?
I think it was.
We had our first
volcano incident.
Yeah. Our first guest we had was a chap called Jeff Stapleton, who Katie knows very well. He's a Canadian guy. He's been coaching running for forever. He's I don't know how old he is. He's been around a long time.
Details.
No, and he's got a wealth of stories, and he just threw one in, which was that he fell down a volcano, and I'm pretty sure it was in the Azores, and he was sort of plummeting to certain death, and somebody caught hold of a twig or something. So this didn't happen to you, obviously. You didn't notice a guy falling down a mountain when you were in the Azores or anything like that, no? Good, okay.
That might be the guy I ran by, and I said, that sucks for him.
And he would have been barefoot, which kind of, is this whole thing that we're looking at, the title of the podcast, Born to be Barefoot. The idea of this is we're talking about something that's natural. We're talking about barefoot movement as a natural movement. Now, you've obviously come at running from the angle of training for other sports. And it's actually really interesting for me hearing you saying what you were saying, because I was grown up running. My whole childhood was about running from dot, with going out with my dad and my brother and what have you, my sister. But when I stopped playing, I played up to sort of professional soccer, you would call it football over here. And running just formed part of the training. We had to run, what they call pre-season. You just ran and you ran and you ran and you ran. When I stopped playing, for me, running was not really something I, fancied doing. And, because it was just like, there had to be, the purpose of it was to get fit to do the activity. Now, you kind of came at it the other way around, didn't it? You kind of, you did get fit. You wanted to get fit to do the activity and get the skill sets and all the rest of it. But then you've just found running was your way forward. I noticed some of the words you used on your website, life-changing, deeply fulfilling, cleansing even. I think these are great terms. And I know there's various running groups that I've been involved with over here on podcasts, and this will be manna from heaven for them to hear you saying that, because everybody just gets hooked on it, committed to it. It's like a state of euphoria almost that people go into. Is that something you find? You kind of go onto a different brain level?
Yeah, I think, and I'm thinking about this run that I did just the other day, and it was I hiked up a trail and then I ran down the trail, and I it's a thing that makes me feel really human and also animalistic at the same time. Like I'm really part of the natural world, but especially on a trail. When I'm running on pavement, it's slightly different. but I still feel like I'm part of the world. I'm part of the natural world. And I feel like I'm moving my body in the way that it's meant to move. It's one of the stories that I've been remembering a lot lately is when I was about to leave my teaching job for this thing that I'm doing right now. As far as being a running influencer, I hate the word influencer, an athlete, that gets paid to do things, that sort of thing.
Inspiring.
But yes, there you go. But this, it was a parent of a former student that I encountered when I was doing one of my last runs down in Georgia when I used to live down there. And she was doing a walk, and I was running towards her, and I waved. And so she says, "Hey, let me ask you a question. Like, why do you run so much?" And this woman was she did horseback riding, and that was her whole thing. And she's like, she didn't let me answer. She's like, I just couldn't run that much. Your body must be made for running. And I thought that was a really interesting take. I mean, obviously it's true, right? But there's so many people who think that only certain people or certain whatever are supposed to be running or made for running, or that running is for them. And I just thought it was interesting that she would say this. And I was like, yeah, you know what? It is. And it was so cool. She's like, well, have a great run. And so she kept walking, and I continued running, or actually I walked because there was a big hill right after that. And so that's what I feel when I run, that the same way that the phrase goes, these boots are made for walking, my body is made for running.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I think that, a lot of the images that we have in our minds about these sports and what athletes look like and blah, blah, blah is quite media driven. Like I remember, media when I was a kid, and it was, beautiful girls and skinny and blah, 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 and things like that. How have you felt? Like, do you think the media has changed at all in the years that you kind of started running and you see more acceptance, or like, how do you think about like what the media portrays the image of running?
Well, I think it's changing a little bit, not quite as quickly as I think it should change in terms of having a fully representative body of bodies, right, that engage in sport, because they're all different types, right? So yeah. we are getting a little bit of it nowadays. It's getting better. There's better representation in print media, and the cool thing about social media is that I get to curate my own stuff. And I get to put out the stuff that I want to put out for people. And I get to sort of choose my community, and my community chooses me. So that's the cool thing about social media. We do have power over that. Although, there's some really awful stuff there too, as well, with filters and, corporate interests, et cetera. But, sort of repeating the things and making worse the things that print media did. So there's got to be a balance there, but I do think we're doing a little bit better. And when I was coming up, when I was in high school or even in middle school, I wasn't consciously thinking about those things as far as representation is concerned, because it wasn't really developmentally appropriate. I think I wasn't. I was concerned about like having friends.
Yeah,
But like the what we saw though was a very, very specific image of who an athlete was. It was either Michael Jordan or someone, or a thin, not overly muscular, tanned but not too tan woman that was probably blonde as the representative for what an athletic woman looked like. So. But we are getting some more different images these days, which is really good to see. We just need to do more. We need to be better.
It's really interesting. From a sports therapy, sports science background, one of the first things you got taught if you studied anything to do with sport was the 3 different body types that are referred to, which is endomorph, mesomorph, and ectomorph. And certainly, growing up, so the ectomorph would be the tall, thin person. The mesomorph would be the one in the middle, sort of a triangular shape upper body and narrowed down into the waist. Typically would be someone like a sprinter. And then there was the endomorph, which would be the sort of more solid, chunky person. And you would be guided into activities that, in theory, or in by definition of the sport, was right. Well, I mean, you mentioned earlier on that you were a plus size at age. What was it?
I was 9. No, I was 13 at that point.
Plus 13.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it was fascinating that you were happily guided to hockey, to field hockey, and to lacrosse, because for a lot of people who would have been described as endomorph, they would have been pushed towards something like I don't know, in athletics, it would be shot put or, one of those strong, big power events. Somebody tall and thin would be more guided towards distance running because, that's the shape you can just keep going. But you were given not free rein, but you were given happily guidance to go and play sports.
We just chose. We chose the sports that we wanted to. Right. That's the beauty of the kind of education.
So what were your other choices though? Sorry, what were your other choices?
Well, we could do volleyball. We could do, it was an all girls school, very small, all girls, very liberal, very progressive. We could do, in the fall anyway, we could do soccer. That was a huge program there as well, I think. And there was no cross country or anything like that. So I looked around. I definitely wanted to play a sport. I did not want to be inside. Yeah. And soccer looked to be very, they didn't look happy over there. So I looked at the field. So I said, let me go over to these girls over here because they look like they're having a good time. And, even though it was hard, I had a good time. I loved the team. And so that was, and there was none of that. There was none of the sort of pushing people into sports because of what their body looked like. And even as a coach, it has never, ever crossed my mind when I was teaching full time and I was a cross country coach. Whoever wanted to be on the team, even if they were annoying, got to be on the team. Were you one of my top 7 runners? No, that was all performance based. It really depended on whether you did the work and then you could be in the top 7, based on your times. But otherwise, there were all types of people in my team. And actually, a lot of the other fall sports would pull people from my team because we were at the bottom of the rungs, because now they were conditioned to play football or soccer or whatever other sport or golf, whatever other sport there was. And so they did use running as conditioning and then, obviously affected my team. But yeah, like I accepted and I also had to accept everyone because, regardless of their body shape, and they would all participate in the meets. And it was really cool to see because what my view of running is as a lifestyle. You can absolutely be competitive at it. If that makes it fun and really, really an engaging thing for you, you should absolutely do that. And if it feeds your soul, you should do that. But I really, really wanted to stress the importance of, number one, moving, especially in this atmosphere, that we have where kids are sitting in their rooms on, playing video games or just being on their phones. And I was like, this could be fun. You could explore. Like even my son's an athlete. So he's at school playing basketball. So, but even for him, he's like, I just want to go for a run. And I'm like trying not to be so like overly excited about it in front of him. Cool. Yeah. I just feel like I just want to go for a run. That's what I want to see from, I think I'll go for a run. I want to be outside. I want to move my body. Let me go for a run. And so, and that's how, even though I do races, obviously I'm not competing for the last spot, that's how I like to view it. I want and need to move my body. I want to be outside and this is what I'm going to do. I have a treadmill. I love my treadmill. There it is right there. And it's a nice Nordic track incline trainer. And I love that too. Sometimes I don't want to go outside. I just want to move my body.
Yeah, it looks like you've been biking a lot too this year.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, you see it on the wall.
That's only 2 of them. They're everywhere. And because I was injured, I had to start riding bikes, and now it's a thing that I do.
Okay,
in addition to the running. Good. Yeah.
Tell us about your injury.
Oh man. How much time do we have? So 2020 rolls around And 2020, let's start with 2019. I did a lot of stuff. But then I started having like Achilles things going on, and my knee started to hurt a little bit, but I was committed to doing all these races. I did my last 50K in 2019. Then I did a couple of other races early 2020. I did a couple of half marathons kind of back to back. And then I did the LA marathon. And then COVID happened. And I was like, well, I'm still going to train because, at that point, we all thought we were only going to be out for about 2 weeks. And 3 years later. And so I was like, I'm going to keep training. I'm going to keep going gung ho. And then my knee started hurting during a hike that I was doing. And then it kind of blew up on me. Like it literally swelled up so much that I couldn't really walk without limping severely. And I was like, oh, I don't think this is good. Turned out that I had a torn meniscus. I did rehab and it helped a little bit, but then I couldn't really run because my knee was all out of whack. And so I decided to have the surgery, and it took a really long time to heal. Well, it healed in time, but it took a long time to recover from that. And in that, I started riding bikes because my running coach was like, if you want to train, you have to ride bikes. If you want to train like you train for running, you ride bikes. And so I did it very reluctantly. And I only started loving it this year.
2 years later.
Yeah. I mean, loving it. I was because my identity is as a runner. And I just got a message from my bike coach. It's so funny. And it was really hard to embrace another kind of identity. And so, I didn't realize how much it had become a part of who I was and what I was willing to do, what I wasn't willing to do. But, I listen to my coach. I love him. I trust him. And so I started riding bikes, and it's been just another way of getting outside and meeting a slightly different crew of people and doing different things and moving a little bit faster. And experiencing hills in a different way.
Yeah, I see you accomplishing some, you show on your Instagram, there's this trail, and you can tell you're a little apprehensive about going down this rock garden.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Cause that hurt. Yeah. And it's all in a spirit of adventure as well. Right. It's, I'm getting out and I'm doing some cross training, but I'm also adventuring. Like now when I plan a training session outside, I'm like, okay, where am I adventuring? Unless it's a road run. Because I don't really see that as an adventure, but it's a necessity, right? But I happen to live in a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. So even my road runs are spectacular. And so, yeah, I started riding bikes, and the same year I started skiing for real. Oh yeah, I saw that too. Yeah. Yeah, so you can't see my skis, but they're back there too. Downhill skiing, yes. And it's all been it's as I said, it's been a wild ride. It's been amazing. And in that, my left knee is amazing. Amazing. It's better than it was before. And now I have 2 more sports to add to running, that keep me going and that keep me happy, that keep me fit. So yeah,
you've hit on the perfect theme here. So in Katie, you've mentioned skiing. I don't know whether you know Katie's background, but she was a double Olympian snowboarder. So winter sports, ski sports are her thing. So, you're going to have a trip up. But how far is Vermont from Toronto? It can't be that far, can it?
It's not that far. Not that far.
So you're going to meet Katie in the next winter and do a bit of mountain work with her.
But better yet, I'm in New Zealand. You need to come here. You can.
All right. Well, that's actually a part of my plan for next year for this summer over here to go to New Zealand. So it's already in the works. And I will tell you that I am obsessed with skiing. I am so obsessed.
I live in the Mecca here.
So I look. Let's make arrangements now.
Nice.
Hang on,
cool.
Can I come?
Yeah, I'd love to show you guys around the mountain.
Maybe we'll let you. That's so cool. That's so cool.
I've only been skiing for 40 years, but New Zealand's never been on the map for me. So this could be a plan.
I'm not gonna lie. There's a few other places that I might put above New Zealand to come down, but the whole like being able to be summer in one place and fly down and have winter and get like spectacular mountain views, and then also where I am, you can like go in the lake, you can go skiing, and you can go like running or biking all in the same day, like even if it's in the middle of winter. So
that sounds like a dream.
Yeah. Mirna's got on the internet. She's booking a flight now.
I know. A couple of the people that travel with me, usually when I do a retreat, they have consistently asked me about doing something in New Zealand. So we might.
Nice.
Okay, so just picking up on that, you said about adventuring. Now, in my extensive research that I carried out, because Katie and I are really good on extensive research, aren't we, Katie?
Yeah.
We noticed, or I absolutely noticed, the 2018 National Geographic Adventurer of the Year. That's
one of 6 or 7. I wasn't the only one. There were about 6 or 7 of us.
Out of the world. Not a big deal.
Yeah. But I was in the same cohort as Alex Honnold. So I'm not mad.
So when they look at that definition of adventuring in that sense, what were they looking at? What was the kind of, was there something you had to achieve, or was it just the fact that you were out there doing a variety of things?
I think it was primarily because I'm not doing any record setting anything. I am not kayaking class 4 rapids. I am, I'm not doing any of those. Well, to some people, what I do is extreme, but I think what I do is show people that it is possible to adventure in a body like mine and skin like mine, with an age, like, I'm not super young. and I think a lot of people have ideas about who adventures, and they have ideas about what an adventure is, but it's so much bigger than what any of us think an adventure is. It's not stepping out of our comfort zone. I could be in my own home having an adventure in my head. I do that a lot. And, or I could be somewhere where there's a little bit or a lot of discomfort. But I'm doing it anyway. I'm learning about myself. I am traveling, not necessarily in the literal sense of the word. I am bringing myself and my spirit and my mind, my cognition from one place to another, my body. And that's what I think adventuring is. And so, I know that they were really, their interest was really piqued by the video that REI made about me and the race that I was doing, and this awful email that I received while I was doing a 50K that, and the email accused me of lying about the things that I do, like running. Oh, and yes, and it was awful. And so this, this video, this short documentary went viral, and it hit a chord for a lot of people. That has been my experience. While I'm just trying to go outside and run, or I get on a bike, and then, people say things to me like, why are you doing that? Just go on a diet. Maybe you shouldn't be out here. Maybe you should hide yourself. Maybe you should go back to the basement and run on your treadmill there, so we don't have to see you, like things like that. So I think that what that documentary did was to open up a whole world of experience to people who thought it wasn't accessible to them. And so that's I think that's why I was chosen as one of those 6 or 7 people. And so, that informs what I continue to do today.
So of these dreadful criticisms and snidey emails, what are the biggest issues? Is it color? Is it sex?
It's mostly my body size that ticks people off because they see me, I'm out here living my best life, right? I'm living my best life in the body that I have. And people are so, maybe insecure is not the right word. People are so caught up on this idea that in order to do something like that, you have to be thin and you have to look a certain way. They can often get violent, not necessarily in behavior, but in their words and in their thoughts towards themselves and towards me. And because that is not the way we are socialized to be. You are, as I said, supposed to be thin. You should have this set of experiences in your life. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. I didn't do any of that. I didn't fit that mold at all. So, people have reactions to that because that is not within their own experience. And a lot of times we as humans, we react to things that are not in our experience, that we have not yet experienced. We don't have a frame of reference for. So that's what the criticism is about, and all of the learning that we've done about, what nutrition is, and, the fact that, oh, you run so much, why aren't you thin? Like, that's a huge question that people have. And yeah, and so I think where that is where what bothers people a lot.
Don't you think there's many sad aspects of that, but one of the saddest things is the closed mind to sound to me. If you see somebody out there doing what you're doing, it's the closed mind. Why can't they just open their mind and say, wow, this lady's doing some incredible stuff, and she's obviously, she's out there doing it, let's applaud it, let's admire it, let's learn more about it. Wow.
I wish people were more like that. And I think there are a lot of people, with the messages that I get mostly positive messages now. I get very few negative messages because I actually don't read comments, unless they're on my own social and for stuff that I put out. Right. And a lot of people are very, very complimentary. Like, hey, like, thanks for being out there. Hey, doing great. Thanks. Thanks for showing my daughter that it's possible to be, plus size girl or fat or thick or curvy and run or get on a bike. Wow. What kind of bike do you have? What kind of shoes? I want to do this too. I want to try this too. And they get so excited. And that's, again, that is another reason why I continue to do what I do despite anybody's criticism. And also, I'm not doing it I am doing it for the people that have negative criticism. I'm going to take that back. I am doing it for them because they need to see me too. It feels bad when that stuff gets hurled at me, and it's traumatizing, and it really doesn't feel good. But, clearly I've touched a chord in them too. And so, when they see someone like me out running or doing whatever, or at the gym, they're going to have a second thought about what that means to them.
I'm an eternal optimist. Now, I'm going to hope that you're going to say to me that some of these people who have been negative in their criticisms have come back at a later date and said, hey, Mirna, I've sussed it. I've got it. I've figured it out. You're doing what you're doing. It's great. Please tell me that's happened.
I definitely have had some people who were initially skeptical of what I did say, oh, okay, well, I've seen, okay. Oh, okay, I could see how that might work. And they're not, super positive, but yeah, I haven't experienced that a whole lot. I haven't experienced it a lot. And that's, and that's okay. That's okay.
You say that you get questions about your gear. Like I know biking has a lot of gear, and they're like gear heads, and they really want to know what you're on, what components, blah, 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 things like that. But I'm just wondering, like, for your running, like you're doing these ultra, 50K plus runs. What do you put on your feet?
Well, these days, if I'm doing road running, which I am doing quite a lot this fall because I'm actually training for a 10K, which I know, right? It's not 100K. But I've never actually trained for a 10K. I've just done them, but I'm training for it. So I wear the Lululemon Blissfeel running shoe. I am sponsored by them, to be, completely transparent. And I love those shoes. And
Can
but
you
for
describe
trail
them
running,
for us for a second?
they're shoes. They're running shoes. They have a softer upper than I think a lot of other running shoes. Well, no, actually, you know what? It's not as soft as a Nike upper, but they're soft. They're softer than I'm used to because I'm used to just wearing trail shoes for everything. But now that I'm doing more road running these days, I wear them. So there's an upper. They're more cushioned. They're not minimalist or zero drop at all, which actually works for my foot because of all the Achilles issues that I've had. And yeah, that's a nice ride. It's not too cushiony. I usually, when I'm road running, prefer a harder cushion, like a stiffer cushion. But these seem to work. And also, I will say, I've had plantar fasciitis for a whole year. It was very, very painful. And these seem not to trigger it. Which is awesome. And so that's for road running. And then for trail running right now, I am using the Salomon Ultra Glide. Again, cushion, but not too much. Not like they don't have as much cushion as a Hoka, but they're more cushion than Ultras, unless we're talking about the Ultra Olympus, which I used to wear a lot. And then, yeah, I wear the Salomons, because they are nice and they're really fitted to the foot. And my foot doesn't move around as much. Yeah.
I said earlier, Mirna, that you hit on a key area with Katie with regard to the skiing, the winter sports stuff. The other thing you mentioned when you started to talk about your Achilles and then your knee is that's my job. I treat people with injuries. That's what I've been doing for 30 years now. The shoe thing's really interesting. I mean, you've obviously looked into your whole shoe thing and such like. Now, again, we know that this podcast is sponsored by Barefoot Science, which is a product I don't think you were given an awful lot of information about beforehand. And obviously, this isn't, it's not a platform for doing a sales pitch. But what I am going to say is that they're going to send you, these guys, from what we've heard you say so far, I'm going to get them to send you a pair of their insoles, because this is a science-based approach to looking at human movement. Now, when you have Achilles problems, something's going wrong with the way that your body is moving. Now, it doesn't matter how tall, short, thin, fat, whatever you are. There are certain rules of movement. So when a foot comes down onto the floor, certain things should happen to the shin, to the knee, to the thigh, to the hip, to the pelvis, and so on up the body. So if you get a problem, something isn't happening quite the way it should do. And then you obviously started getting pain, clearly, with the Achilles. So you would have then done something different to avoid that pain. And you got a knee problem. So what we look at, and I'm, as a therapist, I've been involved with these insoles for about 10 years, is let's try and create the effect of what we're about, moving barefoot as a race originally, but from within any shoe. So it doesn't matter whether it's a minimal shoe or a zero drop shoe or all the different brands that you've talked about. What we want to do for a human body to move as efficiently as possible, regardless of, as I say, shape or size, is stimulate nerves. We have a nerve system that has to tell our brain what's going on down there every time the foot hits the floor. Now, you've got a brain, and your brain needs information, and it needs then to send that information back out to your muscles to tell them, move this way. This is a good way to move. This is a safe way to move. This is an efficient way to move. So somewhere along the line, you got some duff information going up to your brain, which then gave some duff information out to your body.
Wait, I think you made an assumption about my brain that actually happened.
There's no flies on you. You've got to break it up. Don't try that one. So I'm going to get them to send you these insoles, because your body will soak up this stimulus that it provides, and it's within the insole. It goes within any shoe you wear, and it will actually, we know through numerous different ways of assessing movement, from measuring muscle activity, from measuring gait cycles, from all the different aspects of that. And Katie's been put through that. She had really nasty injury problems as a snowboarder, which is how she came across the product, and was put through a whole process of retraining and re-educating her body. to help her move better. And we're going to get you going on that, because your running will be more efficient, more safer, less energy wastage. Your bike, your pedal, when you push down on the pedal, you want that 4-foot grip to be coming through. This is what you'll get. So you're gonna be flying on this. So are you happy for us to send you something?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Yeah. So Katie, you had. Go on.
Oh, sorry. If I could get rid of those niggling pains, that are better now. But no one wants pain.
I'm going to give you one statistic. You said about plantar fasciitis, and Katie and I, our eyes lit up, because we know from a guy, he's a US military pedorthotist, I believe is the word in the States, podiatrist, I would call him over here. 35 years, time served military guy, fixing soldiers with feet that have just had a battering. Now, 60% of the guys and girls that he treated had plantar fasciitis. So he started prescribing Barefoot Science insoles instead of orthotics about 8 years ago, and he's reported a 97.6% success rate resolving permanently plantar fasciitis in these serving and veteran military personnel. So we know that that's a phenomenal figure. It's an unheard of statistic in my world up until now.
That sounds like a magic pill.
I'm gonna get on the email system and get that sent out. I've got you. Katie, how did it help you? You tell Mirna how you came across it.
Oh, it's once you go through the system, then you can definitely have a better understanding, obviously. But it's this, essentially, it's kind of like a you say pill. It is pill shaped. It's this little bit of stimulant that sits in your mid arch, and like once you get it, it feels a little weird. You're like, oh, there's something in my shoe. I don't really know about this. Like when I was going through it, but then once you get to like level 2, 3, then you like really start craving the stimulation in the bottom. Like for me, for snowboarding, we throw our feet in boots and kind of forget about them, and they're switched off. Meanwhile, they're like the main thing that's connecting us to the ground. So for me, it really like switched on my feet and like really felt ready in that forefront position that Stuart's talking about, that you'll get a feel for. And it just becomes addictive. Like you're like, when they're not in your shoes, you're like, oh man, I'm missing something, like I really want my feet turned on. Like I almost feel it, like it's almost like in my gut when you really get that good stimulation, like you can feel it right up your body and everything kind of, I don't really like to use the word align. I like a little bit more like switched on.
Okay.
So, but
I like it.
Yeah. And I mean, I didn't have too many crazy like plantar fasciitis issues or anything. But as I said, like from an athletic point of view, it helped me feel more like more widened
Welcome to Born to be Barefoot. I'm your host, Stuart Gordon, with my co-host, Katie Suyuki. But welcome to Barefoot Science's sponsored Born to be Barefoot podcast with our wonderful guest that we have on, a lady called Mirna Valerio, who is joining us from, whereabouts, Mirna, are you now?
I have to look around and see where I am. I'm in Vermont, where I live. I'm normally in other places around the world or in the US, but I actually happen to be home. So I am in Montpelier, Vermont.
Oh, beautiful.
Fantastic. So Mirna, you've been invited on as a guest for this podcast because, quite honestly, you do some amazing things. So the podcast is called Born to be Barefoot. It's about people who have great stories, who do some really interesting things. And predominantly what we're looking at is people who do stuff that has longevity to it. That is something that they want to keep doing and that they can encourage other people to keep doing, like me, into my dotage. So you run. Basically, you run.
Do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us how, why, when did it all start for you?
Sure. I actually, let's see, I am 46 right now. I'll be 47 pretty soon. And I have been running since 1989. So since I was 13, about to become 14 in high school. And I started running because I wanted to get better at field hockey and lacrosse. And those are the two sports that I played in high school. And I had no experience playing team sports or playing a sport on a field where you had to run a lot and chase a ball. And I somehow got on the field hockey team like at the beginning of school. It was the first day that I got there. It was a boarding school about 50 minutes outside of New York City, and where I'm from. And it's a hot day. I'm not wearing the right clothes. I'm probably Keds with no tread on them at all. Remember those shoes? And long cotton tights and a long shirt, and it's like 90 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius. And with 40 maybe, I don't know, 30 something, 30. And so I'm trying out and I'm doing really poorly. But I somehow got on the team. The coach was amazing to me, and I wanted to really, really contribute to that team. So I started to learn how to run. That when I found out that I was accepted, I went down to the field hockey field the day after our first tryout and practice. And I started running around the field just to repeat the same types of things that we had to do during practice the day before. And my body was very sore and in a lot of pain, of course, because I had never done that much movement on purpose. But that's it. Eventually, a couple of weeks later, I would get up in the morning. Again, it's boarding school.
Welcome to Born to be Barefoot. I'm your host, Stuart Gordon, with my co-host, Katie Suyuki. Well, welcome to Barefoot Science's sponsored Born to be Barefoot podcast with our wonderful guest that we have on, a lady called Mirna Valerio, who is joining us from, whereabouts, Mirna, are you now?
I have to look around and see where I am. I'm in Vermont, where I live. I'm normally in other places around the world or in the US, but I actually happen to be home. So I am in Montpelier, Vermont.
Oh, beautiful.
Fantastic. So Mirna, you've been invited on as a guest for this podcast because, quite honestly, you do some amazing things. So the podcast is called Born to be Barefoot. It's about people who have great stories, who do some really interesting things. And predominantly what we're looking at is people who do stuff that has longevity to it. That is something that they want to keep doing and that they can encourage other people to keep doing, like me, into my dotage. So you run. Basically, you run.
Do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us how, why, when did it all start for you?
Sure. I actually, let's see, I am 46 right now. I'll be 47 pretty soon. And I have been running since 1989. So since I was 13, about to become 14 in high school. And I started running because I wanted to get better at field hockey and lacrosse. And those are the two sports that I played in high school. And I had no experience playing team sports or playing a sport on a field where you had to run a lot and chase a ball. And I somehow got on the field hockey team like at the beginning of school. It was the first day that I got there. It was a boarding school about 50 minutes outside of New York City, and where I'm from. And it's a hot day. I'm not wearing the right clothes. I'm probably Keds with no tread on them at all. Remember those shoes? And long cotton tights and a long shirt, and it's like 90 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius. And with 40 maybe, I don't know, 30 something, 30. And so I'm trying out and I'm doing really poorly. But I somehow got on the team. The coach was amazing to me, and I wanted to really, really contribute to that team. So I started to learn how to run. That when I found out that I was accepted, I went down to the field hockey field the day after our first tryout and practice. And I started running around the field just to repeat the same types of things that we had to do during practice the day before. And my body was very sore and in a lot of pain, of course, because I had never done that much movement on purpose. But that's it. Eventually, a couple of weeks later, I would get up in the morning. Again, it's boarding school, so I'm like, I roll out of my bed, roll down the hill to the field hockey field, do the 5 or 6 loops of the field, and do some stretching and really trying to remember what we had done in practice. So just so I could practice and get better. And eventually, I started to really appreciate just the running itself, because it made me feel good. Not only did it make me a better athlete, and I was faster, and I was able to sustain myself during 2.5, 3 hour practices, but I just felt better and I had more energy. And I just loved getting up in the morning. I've always been a super early morning person, to the chagrin of my parents. Probably. And and that's how that started. It was 1989. So, a lot of people think that I started running as an adult, or that I discovered as an adult. I started in high school, 1989. And with the exception of a 3.5, 4 year pause, well, that's what I'll call it. That's how long I've been running.
Interesting, wow. Isn't it? So, Katie, your high school system, did you play these lacrosse in high school? Was that something that you had to do?
Well, I too went to boarding school from from 14 to about 19 or whatever. So really long time being away and being in, and they like at my boarding school, they made you do sports pretty much. Like you can be on a varsity team or you can be on like the house league team, but you had to do like a sport. You couldn't just and like sports were like real. It wasn't just like, oh, for sports time, like we'll go do computers or something. It was like, no, you had to play like broom ball or field hockey. I also played field hockey. So
best game.
Yeah, it's like it's a pretty adamant sport, because I'm just like, how did, with all these times and everything, how did the men get to wear shorts and the women wear skirts?
Yeah.
running around the field.
And they're still wearing skirts. I see them. Yeah,
I know. But like, I actually quite enjoyed wearing the skirt, because it was like some mixture of this like almost primal feeling of running around with the stick, hitting a ball, and then shouldering